The bodies of 800 babies have been discovered buried in a septic tank in Ireland. The grisly discovery was made at a home for unwed mothers in Yam, located in Galloway County. St. Mary's Mother and Baby Home was operated by Bon Secours nuns between the years of 1925 and 1961. An examination of the bodies show most of the children died of disease and malnutrition. Others perished from diseases such as measles, pneumonia, and tuberculosis. The dead children were buried in simple shrouds with no coffin or tombstone to mark their final resting place. A report from a local health board in 1944 states the facility was housing 271 babies along with 66 mothers. Those 333 residents were well over the capacity of the home, which was only 243. The report states that most babies were emaciated and not thriving. Teresa Kelly, head of the Children's Home Graveyard Committee, said, quote, "It's a mass grave. Many of the babies were malnourished. We want to make sure those children's identities are acknowledged. They had names, they were human beings, and not animals." The septic tank was not marked by any identifier.
That wall there is where we came across the chamber with the remains in it. There used to be a little apple orchard in there, and that's where we were in, when we were getting apples. So we jumped up the wall, and when we landed, we felt a hollow. And there was a crack in the slab, so we actually pried it open. When we pulled across, like, you could see that there was skeleton remains there, like. I had to go in there again, but we came in straight away, and the whole side had been levelled and cleared.
I remember the children at school just vaguely, and I do remember they were segregated from the rest of us. We weren't allowed to play with them. These were like a different species at the time.
Many children born out of wedlock were brought up in homes financed by the state and run by nuns. Some were fostered out, others never came out alive. Tuam, Western Ireland, the remains of hundreds of children were found in a sewage facility underneath the housing estate where used to lie the mother and baby home.
Women and girls incarcerated in Catholic church-run Magdalene laundries, treated as virtual slaves.
My pants wouldn't be washed for months and months. I tried to cover my head in and then I tried to fall off the sleeve. I couldn't, because the nights, the terrible screech, terrible roar ran out from them, and the nuns shouting back and shut up.
It's supposed to be helping the poor and people that needed help, and just kept closing the door.
Accepted it because there was nothing we could do about it. They had the power.
Patrick Joseph and Walter endured 7 years at the home run by the Bon Secours sisters. On average, one child died every 2 weeks between the 1920s and the 60s. The forgotten angels, they're called, who came back to haunt the Catholic country.
You had the same probably routine every day. There was no love, there was no toys, there was nothing whatsoever. And you were just locked in this big building that you didn't see anything. It was like a prison, really.
We were reared in such a way that we were told nothing. I don't remember leaving here. I don't remember being brought to a foster home or anything like that.
The religion, the Catholic Church and the state here are all at fault for making life hell on us. Because I remember I used to be called a bastard. That's the name that on us, because being born out of wedlock. Because she didn't obey God's commandment that she shouldn't have got pregnant. It was enough to punish the mother, but why punish the child? There was no need of it.
Catherine Corliss used to go to the same school as them, and she always wondered why some of these kids, so skinny and dressed in rags, never made it to the classroom.
The plot here is called an angel's plot. It's where the children of the Tuam families are buried.
But found no burial records for 796 children.
I met the keeper of the graveyard, who has the book that lists everybody who is buried here. The 796 were not in his book, which means they're not buried here.
The Irish government eventually carried out scientific tests and confirmed Catherine's theory. Significant quantities of human remains, aged 0 to 3, are located in a mass grave underneath the nuns' property.
And if they got the proper medication and the proper care, I do believe that they could have saved quite a lot more of them.
The home's documents were transferred when it closed in 1961. Admissions, adoption, medical records. Catherine Corliss, the housewife turned whistleblower, wants those responsible to confess their crime. She found an old map of Tuam issued by local authorities in 1970. That's when she noticed something unholy.
They know there's a burial ground there. They know it well, it's written here, and yet they tell me they know nothing. That was one of the obstacles. The obstacles was to get in to Galway County Council to see their records. It's quite obvious they want to hide this. It's too much. It's too big for them. It's almost like a collaboration between the government and between the nuns.
Local boys were seen playing with human skulls. It was a rainy October afternoon ahead of Halloween, a day engraved in the mind of Mary Moriarty. She followed the boys and fell into a pit full of bundles. Stillborn babies, she was told, banned from consecrated grounds.
It was accepted that that's what it was, that it was used by the home for babies who weren't christened. It was about fear that you didn't question the people because it wasn't right. Do you know what I mean? They were the bosses, they ran the schools, they ran the church, and they had a say in everything. And we did nothing about it, but the people within the system didn't do anything about it either.
The power of the church, society turning a blind eye. Why didn't anyone help the children of Tuam? Peter went from the nun's grip to a violent adoptive father who forced him to work on a farm at 4 years old.
I never understand why some human being would do that to another being. No, I just couldn't, no.
One of a dozen such institutions in Ireland, only a few survivors managed to find their biological mothers. After years of research, Patrick Joseph finally located his mother in England. She had started a new life in London, got married, and never told anyone about her son in Ireland. To this day, Patrick Joseph and the other home children are still waiting for the Commission of Investigation to reveal the truth.
The authorities wanted to forget that these children ever existed.
My mother got pregnant outside of marriage, and of course that was a big sin. And the priest in the parish got to hear about it and told her parents that it was an awful disgrace, that she couldn't be seen out because she'd be a bad influence. So they told her then that when the baby is due, that she was to be taken to Tuam, the home in Tuam, and the nuns will look after her there. Then he opened the door and told her she'll have to leave. And she said, I want my son. And they just closed the door on her face. No love, there was no care. What happened in the home? You know, it can happen to you, that you can block things out at such a young age.
I thought it would be just a simple history. The history of the Bonscore sisters and how they worked and how they operated. Of information in the home to work on. There was absolutely nothing. So I went to the local people. I said that's the best way to find out information. And locals were a bit hesitant to say, oh, the poor little children in there, so, you know, they were treated badly. An odd person to tell you they remember screaming in the home. There's still very much a hush-hush affair. And it was only then I got the story of, back in the 1970s, that the two boys found bones of children in a tank.
It was a chamber, a H chamber, you know, and the amount of bones that were in it, there was a good few. Like what we came across in 1972 was reported, and the government knew about it, but yet they didn't do anything about it.
The Bonscore sisters. And they said they had no knowledge or no records whatsoever of any burial in the home. And got on to the county council who owned the land then, and they had no records of burials either. That's an inspector's report for the Tuam home from 1947. It shows the condition of the babies and toddlers, and it makes very harrowing reading. You have a 13-month-old baby in the care of Bonscore sisters who are a nursing congregation. You have a miserable, emaciated child with voracious appetite and no control over body functions, probably mentally defective. Wizened limbs, 3 months old, wizened limbs. 3 weeks old, emaciated and delicate. Oh, that was the Excel copy of the deaths of the babies and children. Unbelievable. Okay, all these deaths, where are they buried? They're not in the main Tuam graveyard. They're not in the mother's hometown graveyards. It is becoming quite obvious what had happened. At the time, there was a lot of questioning my findings, that it wasn't possible. And I was asking myself, is it the fact that there were illegitimate children? Is this stigma still around? That people just still don't care? It just made me more determined to fight this and to say, these children have to be there. People have to know about it. It has been said that children were trafficked across to the United States.
Why did not one nun come forward and say, it was wrong what we did in Tuam?
For a person that was supposed to be baptised, they're not supposed to put into unconsecrated ground. Yes, what did the church do? Put them in there and went and covered up those sites and put a playground on top of it.